The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, translated by George Long. Book 9. He who acts unjustly acts impishly, for since the universal nature has made rational animals for the sake of one another to help according to their deserts, but in no way to injure one another, he who transgresses her will is clearly guilty of impropriety towards the highest divinity. And he too who lies is guilty of impropriety in the same divinity. For the same universal nature is the nature of things that are, and things that are have a relation to all things that come into existence. And further, this universal nature is named truth and is the prime cause of all things that come into existence. He then who lies intentionally is guilty of impropriety inasmuch as he acts unjustly by deceiving, and he also who lies unintentionally inasmuch as he is at variance with the universal nature and inasmuch as he disturbs the order by fighting against the nature of the world. For he fights against it, who is moved of himself to that which is contrary to truth, for he had received powers from nature through the neglect of which he is not able to now distinguish falsehood from truth. And indeed, he who pursues pleasure as good and avoids pain as evil is guilty of impropriety. For of necessity, such a man must often find fault with the universal nature, alleging that it assigns things to the bad and the good contrary to their deserts. Because frequently the bad are in enjoyment of pleasure and possess the things which procure pleasure, but the good have pain for their share, and things which will cause pain. And further, he who is afraid of pain will sometimes also be afraid of some of the things that come in the world, and even this is impropriety. And he who pursues pleasure will not abstain from injustice, and this is plainly impropriety. Now, with respect to the things towards which the universal nature is equally affected, for it would not have made both unless it was equally affected toward both. Towards these, they who wish to follow nature should be of the same mind with it, and equally affected. With respect to pain, then, and pleasure, or death and life, or honor and dishonor, which the universal nature employs equally, whoever is not equally affected is manifestly acting impiously. And I say that the universal nature employs them equally, instead of saying that they happen alike to those who are produced and according to which it moved from a certain beginning to this ordering of things, having conceived certain principles of things which were to be, and having determined powers productive of beings, and of changes, and of such like successions. It would be a man's happiest lot to depart from mankind without having had any taste of lying, and hypocrisy, and luxury, and pride. However, to breathe out one's life when a man has had enough of these things is the next best voyage, as the saying is. Have you determined to abide with vice, and has not experience yet induced ye to fly from this pestilence? For the destruction of the understanding is a pestilence, much more indeed than any such corruption and change of this atmosphere which surrounds us. For this corruption is a pestilence of animals so far as they are animals, but the other is a pestilence of men so far as they are men. Do not despise death, but be well content with it, since this too is one of those things which nature wills, for such as it is to be young and to grow old, and to increase and to reach maturity, and to have teeth and beard and gray hairs, and to beget and to be pregnant, and to bring forth, and all the other natural operations which the seasons of your life bring, such also is dissolution. This then is consistent with the character of a reflecting man, to be neither careless, nor patient, nor contemptuous with respect to death, but to wait for it as one of the operations of nature, as you now wait for the time when the child shall come out of your wife's womb. So be ready for the time when your soul shall fall out of this envelope. But if you require also a vulgar kind of comfort which shall reach your heart, you will be made reconciled to death by observing the things from which you are going to be removed, and the morals of those with whom your soul will no longer be mingled. For it is in no way right to be offended with men, but it is your duty to care for them and to bear with them gently, and yet to remember that your departure will not be from the men who have same principles as yourself. For this is the only thing, if there is any, which could draw us in the contrary way and attach us to life, to be permitted to live with those whom have the same principles as ourselves. But now you see how great is the trouble arising from this discordance of those who live together, so that you may say, "Come quick, O death, lest perchance I too should forget myself." He who does wrong against himself. He who acts unjustly to himself, because he makes himself bad. He often acts unjustly who does not do a certain thing, not only he who does the certain thing. Your present opinion founded on understanding and present conduct directed to social good, and your present disposition of contentment with everything which happens, that is enough. Wipe out imagination, check desire, extinguish appetite, keep the ruling faculty in its own power. Among the animals which have not reason, one life is distributed, but among reasonable animals, one intelligent soul is distributed, just as there is one earth of all things which are of an earthly nature, and we see by one light and breathe one air, all of us that have the same faculty of vision, and all that have life. All things which participate in anything which is common to them all move towards that which is of the same kind with themselves. Everything which is earthly turns towards the earth. Everything that is liquid flows together. And everything which is of an aerial kind does the same, so that they require something to keep them asunder, and the application of force. Fire indeed moves upwards on account of the elemental fire, but it is also so ready to be kindled together with all the fire which is here, that even every substance which is somewhat dry is equally ignited, because there is less mingled with it of that which is a hindrance to ignition. Accordingly then, everything also which participates in the common intelligent nature moves in like manner towards that which of the same kind with itself, or moves even more. For so much as it is superior in comparison with all other things, in the same degree also is it more ready to mingle with and to be fused with that to which it is akin. Accordingly, among animals devoid of reason, we find swarms of bees and herds of cattle and nurture of young birds, and in a manner loves. For even in animals there are souls, and that power which brings them together is seen to exert itself to a superior degree, and in such a way as never has been observed in plants, nor in stones, nor in trees. But in rational animals there are political communities, and friendships, and families, and meetings of people, and in wars, treaties, and armistices. But in the things which are still superior, even though they are separated from one another, unity in a manner exists, as in the stars. Thus, the ascent to a higher degree is able to produce a sympathy even in things which are separated. See then what now takes place, for only intelligent animals have now forgotten this mutual desire and inclination, and in them alone the property of flowing together is not seen. But still, though men strive to avoid this union, they are caught and held by it, for their nature is too strong for them, and you will see what I say if you only observe. Sooner then will one find anything earthy which comes in contact with no earthy thing than a man altogether separated from other men. Both man and God and the universe produce fruit. At the proper season, each produces it, but if usage has especially fixed these terms to the vine and to like things, this is nothing. Reason produces fruit both for all and for itself, and there are produced from it other things of the same kind as reason itself. If you are able, correct by teachings those who do wrong, but if you cannot do so, remember that indulgence is given to them for this purpose. And the gods too are indulgent to such persons, and for some purposes they even help them to get health, wealth, reputation. So kind they are. And it is in your power also. Or say, who hinders you? Do not labor as one who is wretched, nor yet as one who would be pitied or admired, but direct your will to do one thing only, to put yourself in motion and to check yourself as the social reason requires. Today I have got out of all trouble, or rather, I have cast out all trouble, for it was not outside, but within, and in my opinions. All things are the same, familiar in experience and ephemeral in time, and worthless in matter. Everything now is just as it was in the time of those whom we have buried. Things stand outside of us, themselves by themselves, neither knowing aught of themselves, nor expressing any judgment. What is it, then, which does not judge about them? The ruling faculty. Not in passivity, but in activity, lie the evil and the good of the rational, social animal. Just as his virtue and his vice lie not in passivity, but in activity. For the stone which has been thrown up is no evil to come down, nor indeed any good to have been carried up. Penetrate inward into man's leading principles, and you will see what judges you are afraid of, and what kind of judges they are of themselves. All things are changing, and you yourself are in continuous mutation, and in a manner in continuous destruction, and the whole universe too. It is your duty to leave another man's wrongful act there where it is. Termination of activity, cessation, from movement and opinion, and in a sense, their death is no evil. Turn thy thoughts now to the consideration of your own life, your life as a child, as a youth, your manhood, your old age. For in these, also every change, there was a death. Is this anything to fear? Turn your thoughts now to your life under your grandfather, then to your life under your mother, then to your life under your father. And as you find many other differences and changes and terminations, ask yourself, is this anything to be afraid of? In like manner then, neither are the termination and cessation and change of your whole life a thing to be afraid of. Hasten to examine your own ruling faculty, and that of the universe, and that of your neighbor, your own that you may make it just, and that of the universe that you may remember of what you are a part, and that of your neighbor that you may know whether he has acted ignorantly or with knowledge, and that you may also consider that his ruling faculty is akin to your own. As you yourself are a component part of a social system, so let every act of yours be a component part of social life. Whatever act of yours then has no reference either immediately or remotely to a social end. This tears asunder your life and does not allow it to be one. And it is of the nature of a mutiny, just as when in a popular assembly a man acting by himself stands apart from the general agreement. Quarrels of little children and their sports, and poor spirits carrying about dead bodies. Such is everything, and so what is exhibited in the representation of the mansions of the dead strikes our eyes more clearly. Examine into the quality of the form of an object, and detach it altogether from its material part, and then contemplate it, and then determine the time, the longest which a thing of this peculiar form is naturally made to endure. You have endured infinite troubles, though not being contented with your ruling faculty, when it does the things which it has constituted by nature to do. But enough of this. When another blames you or hates you, or when men say about you anything injurious, approach their poor souls, penetrate within, and see what kind of men they are. You will discover that there is no reason to take any trouble that these men have this or that opinion about you. However, you must be well disposed towards them, for by nature they are friends, and the gods too aid them in all ways, by dreams, by signs, towards the attainment of those things on which they had set a value. The periodic movements of the universe are the same up and down from age to age, and either the universal intelligence puts in its motion for every separate effect, and if it does this, be content with that which is the result of this activity. Or if it puts itself in motion once, and everything else comes by some way of sequence in a manner, or indivisible elements are the origins of all things. In a word, if there is a God, all is well, and if chance rules, do not also be governed by it. Soon will the earth cover us all, then the earth too will change, and the things also which change continue to change forever, and these again forever. For if a man reflects on the changes and transformations which follow one another like wave after wave and their rapidity, he will despise everything which is perishable. The universal cause is like a winter torrent. It carries everything along with it. But how worthless are all these poor people who are engaged in matters political, and, as they supposed, are playing the philosopher, all drivellers. Well then, man, do what nature now requires. Set yourself in motion if it is in your power, and do not look about you to see if anyone else will consider it, nor yet expect Plato's republic, but be content if the smallest things go on well, and consider such an event to be no small matter. For who can change man's opinions? And without a change of opinions, what else is there than the slavery of men who groan while they pretend to obey? Come now and tell me of Alexander and Philip and Demetrius of Phalerum. They themselves so judge whether they discovered what the common nature required and trained themselves accordingly. But if they act like tragic heroes, no one has condemned me to imitate them. Simple and modest is the work of philosophy. Do not draw me aside to indolence and pride. Look down from above on the countless herds of men and their countless solemnities, and at the infinitely varied voyagings in storms and calms, and the differences among those who are born, who live together and die. And consider too the life lived by others in olden times, and the life of those who will live after you, and the life now lived among barbarous nations, and how many may not even know your name, and how many will soon forget it, and how they, who perhaps now are praising you, will very soon blame you, and that neither a posthumous fame is of any value, nor reputation, nor anything else. Let there be freedom from perturbations with respect to the things which come from the external cause, and let there be justice in the things done by virtue of the internal cause. That is, let there be movement and action terminating in this, in social acts, for this is according to your nature. You cannot remove out of the way many useless things around those which disturb you, for they lie entirely in your opinion, and you will then gain for yourself ample space by comprehending the whole universe in your mind, and by contemplating the eternity of time, and observing the rapid change of every several thing. How short is the time from birth to dissolution, and the illimitable time before birth, as well as the equally boundless time after dissolution. All that you now see will quickly perish, and those who have been spectators of its dissolution will very soon perish too. And he who dies at the extremist's old age will be brought into the same condition as him who died premature. What are these men's leading principles, and about what things are they busy, and for what reason do they love and honor? Imagine that you see their poor souls laid bare, when they think that they do harm by their blame, or good by their praise. What an idea. Loss is nothing else than change, but the universal nature delights in change, and in obedience to her, all things are now done well, and from eternity have been done in like form, and will be from such a time without end. What then do you say? That all things have been and all things always will be bad, and that no power has ever been found in so many gods to rectify these things? But the world has been condemned to be found in never-ceasing evil. The rottenness of the matter, which is the foundation of everything, water, dust, bones, filth, or again, marble rocks, the calices of the earth, and gold and silver, the sediments and garments, only bits of hair, and purple dye, blood, and everything else is of the same kind. And that which is of the nature, breath is also another thing of the same kind, changing from this to that. Enough of this wretched life and murmuring and apish tricks. Why are you disturbed? What is there new in this? What unsettles you? Is it the form of the thing? Look at it. Or is it the matter? Look at it. But besides these, there is nothing. Towards the gods, then, now become at last more simple and better. It is the same whether we examine these things for 100 years or 3. If any man has done wrong, the harm is his own, but perhaps he has not done wrong. Either all things proceed from one intelligent source and come together as in one body, and the part ought not to find fault with what is done for the benefit of the whole, or there are only atoms and nothing else than mixture and dispersion. Why then are you disturbed? Say to the ruling faculty, are you dead? Are you corrupted? Are you plain the hypocrite? Are you become a beast? Do you herd and feast with the rest? Either the gods have no power, or they have power. If then they have no power, why do you pray to them? But if they have power, why do you not pray to them to give you the faculty of not fearing any of the things which you fear, or of not desiring any of the things which you desire, or not being pained at anything, rather than pray that any of these things should not happen or happen? For certainly if they cannot cooperate with men, they can cooperate for these purposes. But perhaps you will say, the gods have placed them in your power. Well then, is it not better to use what is in your power like a free man than to desire in a slavish and abject way what is not in your power? And who has told you that the gods do not aid us even in the things which are in our power? Begin then to pray for such things, and you will see. One man prays thus, how shall I be able to lie without a woman? Do you pray thus, how shall I not desire to lay with her? Another prays thus, how shall I be released from this? Another prays, how shall I not desire to be released? Another thus, how shall I not lose my son? Thou thus, how shall I not be afraid to lose him? In fine, turn your prayers this way and see what comes. Epicurus says, "In my sickness, my conversation was not about my bodily sufferings, nor, says he, did I talk on such subjects to those who visited me. But I continued to discourse on the nature of things as before, keeping to this main point, how the mind, while participating in such movements as go on in the poor flesh, shall be free from perturbations and maintain the proper good. Nor did I," he says, "give the physicians an opportunity of putting on solemn looks, as if they were doing something great, but my life went on well and happily. Do then the same that he did both in sickness, if you are sick, and in any other circumstances, for never to desert philosophy in any events that may befall us, nor to hold trifling talks either with an ignorant man or with one unacquainted with nature, is a principle of all schools of philosophy. But to be intent only on that which you are now doing and on the instrument by which you do it. When you are offended with any man's shameless conduct, immediately ask yourself, is it possible then that shameless men should not be in the world? It is not possible. Do not then require what is impossible. For this man also is one of those shameless men who must of necessity be in the world. Let the same considerations be present to your mind in the case of the knave and the faithless man, and of every man who does wrong in any way. For at the same time that you do remind yourselves that it is impossible that such kind of men should not exist, you will become more kindly disposed towards everyone individually. It is useful to perceive this, too, immediately when the occasion arises, what virtue nature has given to man to oppose to every wrongful act. For she has given to man as an antidote against the stupid man, the mindless, and against another kind of man, some other kind of power. And in all cases, it is possible for you to correct by teaching the man who has gone astray. For every man who errs misses his object and is gone astray. Besides, where have you been injured? For you will find that no one among those against whom you are irritated have done anything by which your mind could be made worse. But that which is an evil to you and harmful has its foundations only in the mind. And what harm is done, or what is there strange, if the man who has not been instructed does the acts of an uninstructed man? Consider whether you should not rather blame yourself, because you did not expect such a man to err in this way. For you had the means given to you by reason to suppose that it is unlikely that he would commit this error, and yet you have forgotten and were amazed that he erred. But most of all, when you blame a man as faithless or ungrateful, turn to yourself, for the fault is manifestly your own, whether you did trust that a man who has had such a disposition would keep his promise, or that when conferring your kindness you did not consider it absolutely, nor yet in such a way as it has been to be received from you, very act all for profit. For what more do you want when you have done a man a service? Are you not content that you have done something conformable to your nature, and you seek to be paid for it? Just as if the eye demanded a recompense for seeing, or the feet for walking. For as these members are formed for a particular purpose, and by working according to their several constitutions, obtain what is their own, so also as man is formed by nature to acts of benevolence, when he has done anything benevolent or in any other way conducive to the common interest, he has acted conformably to his constitution, and he gets what is his own.